Could you explain the difference between ajatavad, the theory of non-causality, and drishti-srishtivad?
Yes. Vada means it is a contention, it's a point of view. But even to call it a vada is not really doing justice to it. That is, ajata is the ultimate truth. The ultimate truth is that what is alone is as it is, and that nothing has ever happened, nothing has ever come into existence, no ego has ever risen, no world has ever appeared. That is the ultimate truth. But that seems to be contrary to our experience. Our experience now is that we have risen as ego, and consequently we are seeing the world. So though Bhagavan told us that ajata is the ultimate truth, he said ajata is not a teaching, because there's no need to teach ajata. In ajata, there is nothing. There's only just the one that alone actually exists. There's no one to teach, no one to be taught, and there's nothing to teach. There is just what is. So ajata is not a teaching. We are told by Bhagavan and by other sages like Gautama and so on that this is the ultimate truth. But our present experience is that we have risen as ego, we seem to be this body, and we are consequently aware of this world. So the teachings have to begin. That is, if Bhagavan were to give us a teaching, but if Bhagavan refused to accept the problem, how could his teachings help us? If you go to a doctor with some serious illness, if you go to a doctor with cancer, and if a doctor says, "Oh no, you're fine, there's no cancer, there's nothing," you go home and he'd be a useless doctor. The doctor has to recognize what the problem is. So Bhagavan is the supreme spiritual doctor. He recognizes what the problem is. Whereas ordinary doctors will treat the symptoms. They'll say you need to live a virtuous life. Don't do sin. If you do sin, you'll go to hell. Live a virtuous life, then you'll go to heaven. This is just treating the symptoms. Bhagavan is the ultimate doctor. So he goes to the ultimate root cause of all the problems. That is ego. Why is there sin? Because we have risen as ego, the sinner. So whatever the problem may be, it all comes back to ego. So Bhagavan has firstly, he diagnoses what is the disease, what is the root cause of the disease. It is ego. Then what is the solution? How to get rid of this ego? How to get rid of the root cause? It is ātma-vicāra. So when he acknowledges the existence of ego, he's acknowledging, in the view of ego, this world seems to exist. So Advaita teaches us that the ultimate truth is ekam eva advaityam, one only without a second. So if there's one only without a second, why do we see all these many things? Advaita tells us it's all vivata, it's all just an illusory appearance. An illusory appearance, Bhagavan asks us, if it's an illusory appearance, then to whom does it appear? You can't have an appearance without it appearing to something. Nothing can seem to exist except in the view of something in whose view it seems to exist. So Bhagavan goes back to the root. He says, yes, it's an illusory appearance. So to whom does it appear? It appears to you. So investigate this ego to whom all this appears. According to Drishti-Srishti-Vada, there are two ways of explaining this. We can either say all this existed, and then we appeared on the scene and now seeing it. That is, most philosophies, all of science, most religions are based on that. That is called Srishti Drishti. They accept that the creation is there, whether it's been created by God or by a big bang or whatever it may be. They accept first there's the world, and then we appear on the scene, and we see it. That is the ordinary understanding, accepted by religion, by science, by most philosophers. Bhagavan says, why should you believe that anything exists independent of your perception of it? If this world exists independent of your perception of it, that means it has an independent reality. So long as we believe the world is independent reality, then we can gain things from it. Yes, if I think happiness, I'll be happy if I have more money. I can go and try and get money from the world. If I think I'll be happy if I'm more learned, I can try and learn things. I can study whatever I'm interested in studying, or I can try and acquire, I can try and perfect my skill in some sport or in some profession, or I can seek to be a popular celebrity, or to be a very powerful politician. There's so many things we can seek if we take it all to be true. So taking the world to be true is a huge disadvantage on this path. So Bhagavan points out to us, why should you believe any of this exists independent of your perception of it? How can you be sure that what you're experiencing now is any different to a dream? Is there anything that we can experience in this waking state that we could not experience in a dream? Obviously not. Whatever we can experience in a waking state, we can also experience in a dream. So what evidence do we have that this is anything but a dream? So rather than assuming that the world exists independent of ourselves, it's surely better to assume but it appears in our view and has no independent existence. Because if we assume it exists independent of us, then there's no Advaita. Advaita goes out the door, because then there's us and the world. And even to say the world is an appearance and to say it exists independent of us makes no sense. So what Bhagavan teaches is pure Advaita. But pure Advaita is Drishti Shrishti Bhada. Though many Advaitins will accept some form of Shrishti Drishti Bhada, that's a very, very diluted form of Advaita. But true Advaita, well, ultimate Advaita is Ajata. But Drishti Shrishti is not contrary to Ajata in the sense that both Ajata and Drishti Shrishti, they both agree, but what actually exists is only Atma-swarupa. But the difference is, according to Drishti Shrishti Vada, all this appears. According to Ajata, it doesn't appear. So are they then, is there a disagreement? No, because as Bhagavan explained, all this appears only in the view of ego. Ego, so it's only when we rise as ego that all this seems to exist. Ego seems to exist because our attention is going outwards and we therefore take ourselves to be a body. If we investigate ourselves to see what we actually are, we will see that what we actually are is pure awareness. And pure awareness is immutable. So we have never been body. Sorry, we've never been ego. We've never risen as ego and taken a body to be ourselves. So by investigating ourselves, we will find the non-existence of ego. Since everything else seemed to exist only in the view of ego, everything else is as non-existent as ego. So the ultimate truth, when we investigate ourselves and know ourselves as we actually are, we will know there never was any ego, never was any body, never was any world. That is Ajata. So if we follow the logical conclusion of Drishti Shrishti, is that all this exists only in the view of ego. And ego seems to exist only because it's looking outwards instead of looking back within. If ego looks back within to see who am I, ego will disappear, everything else will disappear, and what is alone will remain. And what is ever immutable. So Ajata alone is the final truth. So Ajata is the ultimate truth, but not the teaching. The teaching accepts the semi-existence of ego and shows the way to get rid of this ego. I hope that's a clear distinction. People generally say, oh, Gaudapada taught Ajata. Yes, Gaudapada did say ultimately none of this has ever come into existence. But actually, most of Gaudapada's Karika, Mandukya Karika, he's emphasizing that this world is just a dream. Saying the world is a dream is not ajata. That is drishti shrishti bhada. Of course, in his day, there wasn't a term. This term drishti shrishti bhada was coined only about 400 or 500 years ago, 500 years ago probably, by a person called Shiva Prakasha Swamigal. But that doesn't mean, people think, oh, it's only since Shiva Prakasha Swamigal that this strange idea of drishti shrishti is there. No, it's not. It's very clearly there in Gaudapada's Karika. He's clearly emphasizing that there's no difference between waking and dream. So what he's actually teaching is drishti shrishti. If you apply drishti shrishti in practice, you have to investigate, who am I to whom all this appears? When you investigate who am I, this ego will disappear, everything else will disappear, and ajata alone will remain. That's why he says the ultimate truth is ajata. But he says that after saying all this is no different to a dream. So what he's teaching is exactly the same as, well, Bhagavan, of course, presents it in a much more practical way. Bhagavan goes much deeper, but essentially what Gaudapada and Bhagavan are teaching is exactly the same. They're both teaching drishti shrishti and pointing to the ultimate reality, which is ajata.